Wearable pumps were designed to make pumping easier for moms, but are they enough on their own to protect your milk supply, especially for a working mom? Let's talk about what they can and can't do and the strategic approach that actually makes them work. If you're a working mom trying to pump efficiently, I'm here to help you get confident and in control of your milk supply so there's no guesswork. My name's Allison Tolman. I'm a breast pump expert and a coach for working moms. I've helped hundreds of moms like Monica, an OBGYN, and Kendall, a twin mom, I'll tell you about both of them a little bit later in the video, successfully use wearable pumps. We work closely with clients to help them maintain efficiency in their pumping and their lives. There's a link down below to learn more about how to work with me and my team. But here's the truth. If you want to maximize milk output on a wearable pump, it takes strategy, not luck. And it all starts with mastering your traditional pump first. Now, let's give credit where credit's due. Wearable pumps were invented to make pumping more discreet and convenient for moms, and I do believe they do that. But here's what the marketing doesn't tell you. They're just not designed to be naturally efficient. So here's what I typically see in working with pumping moms over the years. Wearable pumps, in my opinion, typically give you about 80 to 90% of the milk output you'd get with a more traditional pump. For some moms who have abundant milk supplies, that might be totally manageable. But for others, that 10 to 20% drop can be the difference between meeting your baby's needs and having to supplement. Every once in a while, we see a mom with great success naturally with a wearable. But these are usually the moms who make and release milk easily. Basically, any pump works for them. Even a light breeze in the air works for them, okay? This happens, but it's definitely not the norm. Here's my number one piece of advice in working with wearables. Get pumping working well and efficiently on a traditional pump first. I know that sounds a little counterintuitive when you want the convenience of a wearable, but trust me on this. When you understand how your body best responds to a breast pump, your ideal flange size, what techniques work better for you, etc., transferring those skills to a wearable pump is so much easier. Trying to learn pumping fundamentals on a wearable is kind of like learning to drive on a motorcycle in the dark. Okay, sometimes you're a natural, but most of the time that is just a crazy hard idea and you might end up seriously hurting yourself in the process. Now, if a wearable pump is your only option and it's that or nothing, we take it. We take what we can get. But just know that there's likely a trade-off. Sometimes it's worth it. 100% breast milk isn't always the goal for every mother, and even for a lot of our clients. So why start with a traditional pump? Two big things here, all right? You can see what's happening and they are just more logistically efficient. For example, flange sizing is so much easier on a traditional pump. You can adjust nipple alignment in real time as well as see what's happening. Logistically, the flange isn't compressed against the breast either, and gravity is free to help you out. You can also try different techniques like hands-on pumping. You can see letdowns as they're happening and learn how your body responds to a pump so that you can trigger those more quickly and more intentionally in the future. You can troubleshoot issues immediately because you have access and you can see. You also have some natural, like I said, things that are in your favor, not necessarily working against you. So Monica, the OBGYN I mentioned earlier, she came to me one day, she was a client of ours, and she said, I have a 6-hour surgery tomorrow. How do I do this? The thing she had going for her though, is she already had her foundation solid, right? She knew her body's rhythm from using a more traditional pump during her lunch breaks and things like that. So when we added a wearable pump for those quick 5-minute OR sessions, or when she wanted to leave them in longer, we could get her really close to that 90% efficiency mark, and it worked really well for her. Is it ideal to pump in an OR? No, but a wearable pump for her made all the difference. That was the difference between her being able to, at that 3-hour mark, express a little bit of milk versus expressing no milk. And that's what really protected her supply, even if she wasn't able to get that 100% that we want, right? Here's the reality. That 80 to 90% efficiency isn't just a number. This is due to real physical limitations of wearable pumps. The compression from your bra, which you need to hold the pump in place, makes milk removal a little bit more challenging. Nipple alignment also has to be perfect every single time. Bra fit is also vital to hold the pump steady so it doesn't slip, but not too firmly that it causes even more compression. So there's a lot of logistical variables that are both working against you and that need to be right every time. And the big one for me with wearables is moms are often multitasking or not really paying attention during pumping. And to be honest, that's one of the reasons I think wearables were invented, so we can just pump and live our lives. But milk expression is a lot more intentional of a process than most mothers realize. I would love a set it and forget it hands-free option too, but this is one of the biggest reasons why wearables just don't work as well. But the good news is we can work with this. Some moms compensate by pumping more frequently. For example, every 90 minutes to 2 hours instead of every 3 hours. Others extend their sessions 25 to 30 minutes instead of 20. Right? The key is knowing these adjustments ahead of time, not discovering them when your milk supply is already dropping. Real quick, if you can find the comments section, I would love to know, have you tried a wearable pump? What is your biggest surprise? Did you need to adjust your routine at all to make it work? I would love to hear your comments down below. I read every comment, so tell me your experience too, because I think it's an important part of this conversation. So when I'm working with clients inside of our coaching program, here's how we typically approach wearables, okay? Step 1 is to master your traditional pump, understanding your letdowns, finding your perfect flange fit, getting to know your breasts and your milk supply, learning what settings work well for your body, figuring out how to use this robot to express milk. I think we have another video on the channel talking about that. Once we have a really solid foundation in place and the client really understands their own body and their own milk supply, step 2 is to strategically integrate a wearable for specific situations, right? Meetings that you can't leave, procedures like Monica's where she's stuck in surgery, or sometimes when privacy is limited. Ideally, not for every session, but strategically and intentionally. Again, this varies mother to mother depending on what they need and depending on the situations that they are faced with. And then step 3 is to fine tune and adjust. This might mean adjusting flange sizes, extending pumping times, or tweaking your bra fit to get as close to that 90% efficiency as possible. Finding ways to mitigate the downsides of a wearable pump so that you can keep working towards your goals. At the end of the day, I've had many clients who use a wearable pump as part of a bigger pumping plan, and many who even choose to use it exclusively and accept the trade-offs. It really depends on your feeding goals and the limitations in your life. This is not really for me to judge, right? I'm only here to help you be more in control of your experience. Here's a few technical details for you that really matter with wearables, all right? Flange sizing might change, right? The compression and the way that they sit might make it a little bit more challenging. We might have to adjust, especially if user error is high, all right? Think of trying to get a nipple in a perfectly fitted flange and keep it there the whole session. Sometimes it's hard. So if we have to adjust away from perfect a little bit to something that's almost perfect, so that it's likely to work more often, sometimes we do. And again, it's all about understanding the trade-offs. Nipple alignment is also key, right? Since you can't see what's happening, getting this right from the start is really crucial. It takes practice, but you'll want to check this many times throughout a session while you're getting used to a wearable pump. It's not quite a put it in, set it and forget it option as you might be hoping for. Bra fit, like I mentioned earlier, is critical too, especially in relation to flange sizing and nipple alignment. These all go really closely together. If it's too loose, the pump won't function, right? And it will slip around. If it's too tight, you can block milk flow and cause even more compression, which we definitely don't want. Bra fit with a traditional pump is important too, but there's so much more room for error, or it doesn't have to be as perfect before we see big problems. So with wearables, you've got to get it right. Also expect a little bit different timing. Like I mentioned, many moms need a little bit longer sessions or more frequent pumping to compensate for that efficiency difference. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing something wrong. It might just be a trade-off that a wearable it requires. And please, please, please pay attention to your pumping sessions. Multitasking during pumping seems amazing, but often it causes a lot of problems. You'll still need to trigger multiple letdowns, and since you can't see them anymore, you're going to need to be aware of how and when to do this, all right? So you might need to adjust settings during the session like we would on a more traditional pump, all right? So make sure you're still doing the things that you would do in other pumping sessions. Sometimes I see users pump for 30 minutes and get half an ounce, not even one letdown, right? That's a huge red flag. Or sometimes it's half the output they normally get. Again, there are so many variables to troubleshoot. So start with one at a time. while you make sure that you're protecting your milk supply in other ways while you're trying to figure out how to use a wearable more efficiently. Just to be clear, I'm not trying to talk you out of a wearable pump, but I do feel like I need to help set up realistic expectations so you know what you're walking into. The marketing of wearable pumps kind of makes it seem like the answer to all of pumping moms' problems, but they still have a long way to go. You can get them to work well, though. Amanda from our community shared, I went back to work this week and it was so amazing to have a realistic plan and know that I know when and how to adjust in case my milk supply starts to get off. I feel like I can navigate my crazy work schedule and my pumping schedule, which are pretty different every day. She actually utilized a wearable pump occasionally, and it worked really well for her, especially her work schedule was all over the place and different every day. So wearable fit really well into her pumping plan. Like I said, I help clients use wearable pumps often, and there are several situations where the benefits might outweigh the downsides. Wearable pumps excel when you can't access a private pumping room, all right? You need more discreet pumping option. Or when you're in meetings or procedures that you can't leave. Again, sometimes we need to talk about boundaries and how to set those up too, because it's not always that you're totally stuck, but I get it, sometimes you actually are. Or if you need discretion in shared spaces, or if you need to pump more frequently to compensate. So if you are someone that would otherwise miss pumping sessions completely, that 80% efficiency might actually increase your total daily output. Think about it, 80% of something is better than 100% of nothing. It's just math. Something I always say to clients, especially when we're using wearables, it is always better to get in a shorter, incomplete session than skipping the session altogether. So if you are struggling with a wearable pump, I would consider asking yourself these few questions. Are you trying to learn pumping fundamentals on a wearable pump? If so, that's a red flag. Have you calculated what 10 to 20% drop in efficiency means for your daily total, and are you okay with that? Do you have realistic expectations about pump times and frequencies? If your supply is already fragile or you're barely meeting your baby's needs, that efficiency drop could push you into undersupplied territory. So I just want to make sure you have a really solid understanding of where you're at right now to make sure that a wearable is not going to cause long-term problems for you. Jessa, a mom of twins and a busy pharmacist from our community, celebrated one day. She said, I made my pumping goal at work today for only the second time ever, 32.3 ounces. That success came from understanding her baseline first, then strategically using tools to support her specific work situation. So to do that, she utilized a wearable pump heavily as part of her pumping plan. I think almost exclusively, actually, she was using that one a lot. And she was able to make it work for her. It came with a couple trade-offs, but for her, it was worth it, and I was so proud of her. The moms who succeed with wearables aren't the ones who got lucky with genetics, right, sometimes, but the ones who are doing it successfully are usually the ones who started with a solid traditional pump first, really understood the efficiency trade-offs up front, adjusted their pumping schedules accordingly, and had realistic expectations about what wearables can and can't do. So after all of that, are you still looking for a wearable breast pump? We actually have a free course on choosing a breast pump that walks you through everything you need to know to understand your body's needs and pump fundamentals. So whether you end up with a traditional, wearable, or both, you'll know how to make them work efficiently. There's also a breast pump library that will walk you through a lot of the information and a little bit of data, things on all of the pumps that we have tested so far. That's also available for you in conjunction with that free course. Here's the bottom line. Wearable pumps can absolutely be part of a successful pumping strategy, but they work best when they're complementing a solid foundation, not replacing it. Sometimes I like to think of that 80 to 90% efficiency as a trade-off, not a failure. All right, for the right mom in the right situation, it's absolutely worth it. But going in blind and hoping for the best, that's where I see moms getting really frustrated and discouraged. If you have made it this far in the video and you're looking for some personalized help with understanding how your body responds to a breast pump and how to protect your milk supply, especially as a working mom, there is another link in the description to apply to come and work with me and my team. We would love to help you become your own pumping expert, to walk alongside you as you learn how your body works, what it is capable of, and how it best responds to a pump. Some milk is always better than no milk, but informed milk production, that's always better than guessing. All right, good luck with your wearable pump and happy pumping.